Hey everybody, Eric with Solobox. Today I'm thinking a little bit about accuracy and how the difference between a millimeter, that's the difference between that's a usable part and that's something I'm gonna have to shit can. And so a lot of the process of learning how to manufacture motorcycle parts, a lot of it has come down to, just figuring out how to have the accuracy that I really need. And sometimes it's really stupid little stuff like this scribe that I use to lay things out. You can see it's really, really sharp. And the reason it's really sharp is because I use this a lot of times. I'll have to get the tool to ride right down inside of that groove. Well, if it's rounded off, the next thing you know, you're about a half a millimeter off. And when you're a half a millimeter off, that sets off a chain of events that ends up not being so good. Like, take this brake as an example. I noticed that over the course of time, as I would open and close this dial, which decides how much clamping pressure I get down the full length of this, it was turning, and so I built a set screw to keep it from being able to do that. And you can see I've got it marked because if that turns at all, if it's not clamped exactly the same at both ends, you don't get the same exact radius of a bend. And if it's not the same at both ends, it turns into an absolute nightmare. Just knowing how to dial this tool in and keep it dialed in, man, you can end up really pulling your hair out, especially when you've built a part and something, is just a hair off and you can't figure out why. The shear, I keep the blade at 6 thousandths. Now, that means there has to be a 6 thousandths gap between the two blades right there, all the way down the length of this, which sounds really easy until you realize you bought this at Grizzly. Not exactly known for their quality. Although I will say Marshawn, yeah, he's named after Marshawn Lynch. It's been a good tool to me. I've built 1 million boxes with this thing, but keeping it dialed in has not always been easy. So this morning I've been working on the jigs that I use. This is the jig that I use to make just my standard sized boxes. And these are spots that have to be punched that will allow, actually let me grab one that I've already built. This is a box that's already laid out. And so what I've been working on this morning is improving the accuracy. You can see where all these layout lines are. So these are all going to be spots where I have to make bends on that machine over there. Well, if these aren't 100% square and in exactly the right spot, yeah, it's not going to go so well. And so I've been using this jig for a long time to make these boxes. And I originally drilled these holes out to 3/16, and I was using, where's my old punch? I've been using this punch for years and years and years. I don't even know where I got this, but this has built a lot of motorcycle parts. But basically that 3/16 hole allowed this to float around in there a little bit, and it wasn't as accurate as it could have been. And so I would lay out this side, and then I'd flip it around and lay out this side, but for some reason, the line that needed to be perfectly drawn in between it with this square, they wouldn't show up exactly the same. And so what I did this morning was I took the spool gun and I filled these back in with some aluminum, ground them down and re-drilled them with a smaller hole. I also replaced my punch yesterday with something, and I chose the size of this hole based on this new punch so that there's really no wiggle room in there. So when I punch this, I know exactly. Before it would float around a little bit, and so you'd always be sort of second guessing yourself. And believe me, man, a half a millimeter is a huge, huge deal. I'll give you an example. So if that punch mark at this end is a half a millimeter off, let's say it's just over this way, just a tad bit, and then you take another square and butt it up to it, you'll see that by the time it's halfway out, it's already traveling. Well, then you start to, when you bend that, both sides of this box, they need to come up and end up at exactly the same spot. And you'll just be pulling your hair out because one side's like half a millimeter shorter than the other. And, you know, the next thing you know, you're recycling this entire piece of metal because it's totally useless. Yeah, so accuracy is, man, it's just everything in this shop. I've done some things like these pocket jigs. This line that needs to run parallel with the edge all the way down, man, it's really hard to get that layout exactly right. And so I invented these pocket jigs where I can just slip the metal down in there and scribe across, and every single one of them comes out exactly where it needs to be. Inventing stuff like that has really helped a lot. So, what else was I gonna say about accuracy? It's a sumbitch, I'll tell you that much. So anyway, I guess that's about all I wanted to say for today. Eric with Solo Box. I'll talk to you guys later. Ride safe.